we are, and this is a June 10th, 2021. We are in the Mount Dora History Museum. My name is Ernie Mosteller. I'm the interviewer, and I'm going to have our interviewee introduce himself, tell me how long he's been in Mount Dora, when he was born. Just tell me a little. I mean, tell me a little bit about yourself. I haven't met you before.
My name's Ozell Ward. I was born in technically Leesburg because of the hospital arrangements, but I'm born and raised in Mount Dora, grew up here, and had some time away through military school work and those kinds of things, and over the years have come back as a retiree, 74 years old, and back probably 6 or 7 years actually living, and have, because of family ties, parents and so forth, I didn't live here, I frequently visited and came and saw people and things over the years. So not living here, but not really divorced from here in that sense because of the family connections. And so as a result, I still have a great deal of familiarity with Mount Dora and a lot of people, especially those who are still alive and their kids and that kind of stuff.
It's funny because I did the same thing. I went away and I came back and I feel exactly the way you do. I mean, can you ever really leave Mount Dora?
Well, I think some people can, but it's been a weirdness of mine for years because my wife always, why you want to go back to mine? Why you want to go back to mine? Look, nothing there and all that kind of stuff. And I probably can talk forever about reasons, whether they make sense or not, but the bottom line was I've always had an affinity for Mount Dora and being home and familiar. I'm not sure what all of that is, but it's never been a place I didn't want to be.
What is it that makes Mount Dora tick in a way that its surrounding areas don't?
Well, part of it is probably experience in all areas. Part of it is, probably that comfort and nostalgia of familiarity and the warm fuzzies that were there. And even if there were a bunch of unwarm fuzzies, the warm fuzzies are the ones that kind of you relate to and get back. And I bet you can find 1,000 reasons, but there's something, I don't have a word for it. Comfortable, pleasurable, in spite of all of the other things that might be in there too. It's still never not wanted to come back here.
We're talking about, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s. Tell me about childhood. Tell me about the years of your childhood, things that you remember doing, things that you remember. Where did you hang out? Where did you go to school? Who were your friends?
It's a complex question. The reason I say it's complex, and I think we've had kind of, there are great things and then there are the ugly things, and as a kid, and I struggle with this when I'm having discussions with people or in some forum or something. There's one side that this romanticized, idyllic childhood in the woods, free hunting, fishing, and all of that stuff, and being a kid with friends, your classmates, and all of that stuff. And then somebody will, well, what about segregation? Because I grew up in a segregated system officially through 1964, I guess, in terms of official documented regulatory, hey, you're free kind of stuff. And that discrimination and segregation was all there as well. definitely was aware of it. It guided, don't put your hand in your pocket when you go downtown in the 10-cent store, that kind of stuff. Don't go across this line in the drugstore because that's the white side, and you can only order here and get what you go and go outside. Well, yeah, all that was awful, but I was eating ice cream. You see, that's a kid. Now, was I ignorant and unaware of the segregation and all of that stuff? Absolutely, we knew that stuff was going on. And there were boundaries and rules and things associated with it. Don't put your hand in your pocket, you go downtown.
Don't go past the print shop.
Yeah. At night or a certain hour, or you can have ice cream, but you order it here. Don't cross that line and back out and eat it. Hey, the ice cream was good. That stuff that was there wasn't really something invading you and consuming your thoughts every day. It just wasn't. And then there was that side, you needed to know the rules and all of that stuff too, even as a kid and having a good time. But when I look back, a lot, at least in my experience, we really were not exposed to that in a vulnerable fashion as kids.
Were you sheltered by your parents?
Not see, that's a confusing term too.
Okay. Did they make efforts to protect you from that?
Of course they did. Sure. Put your hands in your pocket when you're in the store. But did they say, oh, it's something big? No, it wasn't like that. It wasn't a fear factor. It wasn't, my God, you're going to get killed if you do. It was just little rules of navigation, and they were always there. Like, you always say yes sir and no sir to white people. Well, there's another side to that. We always said no sir and yes sir to grown folks. So when I said no sir and yes sir or something to white people, at one stage, it was just, I'm a kid and that's what you do. As awareness came, you don't say yes sir and no sir. You don't say yeah, no. You might not answer, but you don't say no sir and yes sir, and so now you're being rebellious and nobody even notices it. You see, so it's a two-world kind of thing is really interesting.
I mean, you became aware early as a teenager. And started.
Well, before that, you had an awareness because you knew these little rules that there were behavioral rules, but we have behavioral rules anyway. And that's what I mean about yes sir, no sir. Well, I'm a kid. I say that to everybody. I just, boom, black, white, you just did that. So it wasn't a big deal to say yes sir and no sir to white folks as a kid. And then some point when you kind of have a more presence in the dichotomy world, you do little things like you don't say yes sir and no sir. Now you don't say yeah and no. You might say, well, I see what you're saying and we might do that. But you don't say yes sir, thank you. See, little things like that, that at some point, those are conscious awareness and you did them. At some point, you just did them because that's polite behavior and that's how you were raised, to be polite to folks.
When did you graduate high school?
I graduated high school in 1964.
So you did the whole thing under segregation.
Mm-hmm.
Never went to Metro High School?
No, didn't go to high school in Lake County at all, as a matter of fact.
Okay.
My parents sent me up to Gainesville, Lincoln High School, because the busing was an issue. We were driving to Eustis for high school, and people from the rural areas, driving past Mount Dora High School to Eustis to high school, Bates. Or actually, it was Eustis Vocational School. That was the black high school. I went to Gainesville because there was a set of circumstances in knowing somebody first that had that become an option. And we had relatives there. My stepfather had sisters that lived there. And so it was an opportunity to go to the city school, if you will. And it wasn't a negative about Eustis Vocational. It was just there's possibilities of enhancement because of location and some other stuff. And as it turned out, from my experience, I didn't go to Eustis Vocational, but that there were some benefits from doing it. It was a different environment, number one. The university was there, number two. And a quick side, I like this hand-me-down material stories. Well, that in and of itself, in terms of what was done, is awful, but how was that combated? Well, yeah, we took a math book, I don't care how old it is, it's got the basic building or science. So we did, they had all these hand-me-down books, but our teachers every summer went to continuing education. They come back with these syllabuses of subject matter. We do the basics out of these crappy hand-me-down books that somebody thought was a negative. I don't know the motives, but that's what it was. And then we got taught, in my opinion, after all these years, I still think my black segregated education, in my experience in the schools I attended, were absolutely brilliant, excellent schools, in spite of all the circumstances and things that went down. And the dedication, the teachers had a different motivation. It wasn't just a job. It was a good job in those days, but it wasn't that. There was there appeared to be some set of need to make everything the best it could be for you.
You're a kid and you go to Milner Rosenwald, I'm assuming, and you're hanging out with your buds and school's out. What do you guys do?
What kids do?
What do kids do? Tell me. Yeah, see.
No, I answered that.
Yeah,
what do kids do?
Yeah.
That's what we did, and
Yeah.
we played on the playground, baseball, softball, basketball. We went to the pool. We went hunting. We went fishing, and we wandered around the woods, and like we didn't have a care in the world, and we did.
Where'd you guys hunt?
That's a great question. On Lemmet Street. Used to be on the north side of Lemmet Street, which was the county road that we called it, and it was a clay road maintained with the big graders that would come through every now and then and smooth it out and make it look pretty. That was the Lemmet Street, and that pasture over there. And the orange groves, the Simpson groves, those are all hunting grounds. Rabbits in the groves that would, you could see them a mile down the road, and pow, you got a rabbit. You go out walking the pasture lands, bobwhite quail stuff. That there was a big ditch. It's a little remnant of it now. It's not the same, but it was a waterway of sorts. I mean, it had water in it, it had depth to it, and it was a big drainage flow ditch. Ignorance and pollution days knowledge, because can you imagine the stuff from the orange groves? But we didn't know that, so we ate fish out of there. We caught crayfish, we frogs. We could go out, you'd leave home in the morning, you wouldn't come back to supper time. And you'd kill a bird, find a frog, catch a fish or something, eat. And we could range from Easttown out to Serena, out to where Round Lake Road, all those areas behind the flea market. springs all back there, always had water. I got in the Boy Scouts to know you number one, that you had to sterile. We didn't do that. You could drink water, Eddie, you know. And so that's what we did. And that, I don't know if it was directed, undirected, but we had we were kids, in spite of everything else. And we even played with white kids. But there became an age where we ain't together no more. That makes me digress. There's a kid that used to come down Jackson Street or Tremaine Street and head down west down toward the clay pit, and he'd live somewhere and be coming from school. And he'd just stop and we'd play and run in, and he was nice and friendly. And one day, he wouldn't stop. And, whoa, what's wrong? He said, I can't do this no more. And it was just so strange. It was just suddenly the age limit had been reached, and you ain't talking to each other no more. You ain't playing socializing. Did that make questions? Yeah. Because now it's kids. It makes no sense. And that's when I started getting discussions about people, good people, bad people. I was never taught to hate anybody, but some people ain't right. So you need to understand that. And so some of those people kind of things, not the system, stuff started drifting in about the behaviors and norms and all that stuff. Not blatantly sit down, do, we're going to have a big lecture and line out all the, it wasn't like that. The lessons were just learned at some point, time, reason, or something that you were told not to put your hand in pockets when you go into Vincent variety store. And another story like that, yeah. Tennessee family would come down on the corner of Tremaine and Jackson, because Tremaine, west of Jackson, was white. Spotted people lived, but it was white. The east side of Tremaine was black. And there's a couple and their grandkids that came from Tennessee every summer in that house. And it was a boy and a girl, and we played. We were about the same age. One summer, they came, and you know, kids are, you know, see, yeah, like we always did, woo, we can't play with you now. I mean, just, so those are the kind of encounters that kind of interrupt your idyllic, romanticized childhood imagery.
Did they? I mean, did you question them? Did they give you reasons? Was it things that they had? Was that a position they had arrived at on their own?
Did I question?
Or was that? Or like, how come you can't play with me? Was it mom and dad who told me not to?
Who was going to ask those questions?
Well.
And who needed to ask the questions?
Well, they needed to ask the questions of why if somebody's telling them.
No, you can't ask white folks why they're doing something. That's their work. You know, and we knew. My parents knew. And they probably knew it was going to happen. I don't know. But why were they asking so? You start asking that question, and then you get, well, you know, you start getting these little life lessons interjected and defined, and it wasn't accepted because that's what you're supposed to be. It was, this is the way it is, because I never considered my parents and family members to necessarily be kind of wallflowerish. And for those that know my mom, I know she wasn't. So I don't know if the others were kind of faking it, but she was, segregated and no segregated. So that's how, because you asked the question earlier about how do you know, and these are the kind of little things that build the lessons. And some of them you get the behaviors taught without any explanation. And of course, as you get more educated about what's really in the know, and you're moving away from that idyllic, romanticized childhood play thing. You start connecting more dots to build the structure of how you're supposed to behave, what you should and shouldn't do, what'll get you killed, all that kind of stuff. Little thing like looking people in the eye, that's a desirable trait. But black guy, you better not be looking white man in the eye. See? That's, because people have been shot. You looking at me wrong, nigga. Boom! Just like that, and nobody, so little things like that that seem trivial, at some point it gets introduced as a behavior that you need to understand, because it's critical. Yeah, the white kids go through the 10 dimes and touch everything, and just black kid, you don't touch anything in there. You keep your hands out of your pocket and you don't touch anything. Think about a kid with that kind of instruction.
In Vincent's, where
yeah, all the shiny boom to everything at the eye level, and you can't even touch it, and you see these kids running and making a mess. But if you made a mess, man, somebody might take you out, kick you, beat you or something. I mean, it was an unreasonable response to whatever it was. So it was not, you didn't go to town for leisure enjoyment. That wasn't, you had to have a business and go, because you didn't, too many traps, peril, too many perils. So why would you be going down there?
So I don't remember that. I don't remember the water fountains and all that. But how much of that existed in downtown Mount Dora when you were growing up?
All of it. That was the environment. I mean, that was just it. So it was all here. Water fountains, the 2 marked water fountains. And somebody I was talking with the other day mentioned that the water, there was a sign or something, and I don't remember the sign. I don't know if it was always there to put up later. It says, the best people in the world drink out of this fountain. And that was on the white fountain.
Yeah.
Now, get back from this idyllic kid standpoint. At some point, when you started being more aware, I knew they were colored black water fountains. Sometimes you sneak a drink out of the white water fountain. Sometimes you spit in the white water fountain just as you passed it. And the truth is, none of the damn water tasted good in the water fountain. It was gross. I mean, it was just water fountain water through whatever pipe and back in the sun. It didn't taste good anyway.
Yeah, it always tastes better coming out of the hose at home.
Yeah. You know. And another little thing that I mentioned before, talking about behavioral training, don't look at people in the eye. Well, guess what? At some point, at least in my little simple, don't have enough sense brain, looking people in the eye became something that you did. I mean, just for the hell of it. I mean, no other reason. But it was a dangerous game to play, but it probably wasn't as dangerous at that stage in time as it was a little earlier. But rebellion or accepted, people were not necessarily a little passive, scared for scramble up. There were little things rebellious. Like my grandmother would not ride in the back seat of a car of somebody she worked for. In fact, you had to drive her back and forth to work. We had cars, but she didn't drive to work. You needed to come pick her up because she didn't drive. And no, you hired me. And that was one of her little things, because black servants were the only people you saw with a white driver and black person in the back. Now, was that a little rebellious? I don't know. But it certainly wasn't what everybody else did. See? So people did things that, when I look back, I really seriously think about, was there just a little subtle damn you-ness in things that they did.
And there's no other reason.
And the grandmother is really that extended family that we used to have, that why that image is, I think, in some respects is so powerful, because those are the people that spend time when you have a family units that are close. Those are the people who spend time with the young folks. Those are the legacy lessons and learnings and little subtle teachings that you get are from those contacts, because they're there. The parents are always out working. I don't care whether they're black, white, or green. If in those families, the parents are always out working. The elderly folks are the ones that, however it happens, end up spending and doing some of the training and lessons and modeling that we pick up on. And so they are near and dear to us.
Talk to me about Easttown in its heyday. Talk to me about, what was there, what kind of shops, what kind of stores, what kind of bars, talk to me about that, because we haven't talked much about it in this film yet.
Right. I'm pondering to try to organize how to go through the segment. And as I'm thinking, basically the Easttown, quote, business district was from Tremaine Street north to Grandview in about half a block or so. In the drugstore, which was not a drugstore, it was over-the-counter drugs, elixirs, castor oil. I think about castor oil because that was one of those schedule purges that you had to go through. And God, don't say you're sick. With castor oil, first step you take to see what it is. Okay, that didn't work. Now it goes somewhere. So, but that's a diversion. So the Mr. Ted Goggins had this store that we referred to as a drugstore because it had patent medicines and over-the-counter stuff, and they had a soda fountain. Sundays, ice cream, and all. We had all that stuff there, and it was a place where people went in. One of the things, church. We went to church. Everybody went to the same church on different Sundays. So, for instance, the Baptist church, they would have the first and third Sunday services. Everybody in town went to the Baptist church that Sunday. When the Methodist church, we did church second and fourth Sundays. Everybody in town, especially the kids, not all the adults, but all the kids generally, it wasn't it was a social thing intermixed. So we all went to church. But after the offering, because there was a process, during the offering, we would put half of what we were given to put in the church, and we take 2 cents, or if it was a dime, we take a nickel or something, and after the milling around, and they used to go in and count the money and come back out and tell. Well, we all disappear except those kids who knew that, man, if you leave and don't show up, and your parents are gonna kill you. But the rest of us, if we could, we'd be gone, and we go down to Ted's and get soda, ice cream, or something, and we'd be sitting there with everybody else to finish church, because you only had about a half hour left anyway. So that was a social place. Ted Goggins eventually, somewhere in the early 60s, I think it was, built in a little addition onto the east side of his place, and that became the teenage club. And we had, it was a place for kids, teenagers, and it was the length of the building room, somewhat narrow, and it had a jukebox in it and a lot of dance foreplays. It was a teenage club. That's what we called it. And so we had dances in there. Sometimes he charged. Sometimes you just go in and kids could go in and dance. Just to the east of Ted, on the corner of Grandview and Grant, his wife ran a bar. And it was a big old building that it used to be a house, and there's a little pool room on the side. Across the street on
What was the name of the bar?
I was trying to think of that.
Okay.
I don't know if it was I think it was the Blue Moon, was that bar.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's,
yeah.
yeah.
It was corner of Grant and Grandview.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
And then we had a place there just to the south of the intersection. There was a lot there. One time it had a mortuary. It used to be in there. It used to be a presser cleaner business that was there, black owned. And the presser cleaner business was there. And then eventually the mortuary came. There was a satellite office or somewhere, but it was there. Larry was the guy's name that owned, his last name was Larry. Albert Larry's uncle, I think that was Albert's uncle, ran that dry cleaners. We had a place next to it, and we served beer, wine, and food. We also had rental properties. We had some apartments above it, rooms. Apartments, a fancy updated city name, but they were rooms. You know, laborers used those rooms when the season, the corn season was here. The migrant workers, their rooms they rented. We had rental properties, other rental properties too. So that was our business, and my folks had jobs. That's a piece. I don't know, we were kind of considered well off or something, whatever that meant. But it wasn't that we were wealthy. We had two jobs, a business that they worked themselves after they did the day jobs, and you know, things closed at 12. Yeah, you shut the door, lock the door, go home, go to sleep. No, you clean up, you got to do this, you prep some stuff, you know. So, and my dad worked. He was a builder. That's where he eventually became builder contractor. He started off as a carpenter helper or something, and learned third grade education when people wouldn't teach you to do anything, because why you want to know how to do that? But there were some people who, well, when you ask, they start, yeah. And so through that kind of contact, he developed a real skill at building. And he was a pool shooter. And then why did I bring that up? Well, as I grew and some of the things I've learned and what skill sets go into the math and geometry, carpentry, pool, the guy had a great mind. He just had a third grade education. And he learned to do this stuff and was real good at it, and also became a subcontractor, you know, and people ask him to come to jobs, and you know. But again, I put this connection, and the dots start. Wow, the guy is brilliant, but he has a third grade education, and this complex things that he's doing with no education. I mean, and so those little things, how if you got them right, and you start piecing things together that had no connection, until something else, as you grow and grow in the puzzle or the picture, all these dots, you wonder if they were really connecting them. I don't know. Why did my mom work for a lady that wanted me to let me come in and go through her library every time they were in the house working? Come on, look at this. Man, I don't know, 2 systems and stuff like this that makes no sense. Penny Dixon. Man, I used to go to work with my grandmother or my mother or my sister-in-law, whoever was doing something for, and I'd go down there and I'd be helping, and the next thing I know, I'm sitting in the library and, hey, you like this? And pulling books. Hand-me-down books out of the libraries, things that I studied, looked at and exposed to. Did they plan that? Kind of, this is what I'm going to work for because we can kind of do these little things that might be, I don't know. But after you get past the romanticized childhood and all that, and you thinking, reflecting back on, I don't know. So life, I don't know, Ernie. It's really interesting. When you talk about history, the living through it, the reflecting back, because you're reflecting back in a different space than your mind's in when you're there. Were there all these things, little bitty pieces of things that were done to try to circumvent, get around, and make some gain, stride, understanding, however small, through these little exposures? I don't know. And I tell people a lot, I reflect back. I grew up with old folks, great uncles and aunts and stuff that hold the Simpson groves to make a grove out of it and traded labor for land and all that stuff. And over the years, this rustic, creepy looking, I had a great appreciation because they created this stuff. They didn't have a blueprint, didn't have nothing. Tools, houses. We redid an oldest house that heard across the street from us on Jackson Street, sort of. And my dad and a neighbor guy that still lives in the neighborhood, they did that, and we were talking one day, and George was telling me about the railroad tires. When they got down and started stripping the remodel and redo the building, the railroad ties, it's like they were perfect, solid, drenched in whatever it was. They were the footers, and they looked like they put there yesterday. I don't know where they got them from. I don't know where they got them. I can't even imagine. Did they work on the railroad and got 1 or 2 here or there? Did somebody scrap them? But that was the foundation for that house. And guess what? They left them there, and it's still the foundation for it. Those things are just amazing. So people did things.
So talk to me about church life. Give me some more church life.
I'm going to give you a Mason life
Okay.
first, because since you mentioned that. It's kind of interesting because there's some stories around Masons. My stepfather was a Mason. My brother-in-law, I don't know if he was a Mason, but he knew all of the Mason stuff, so he'd be a Mason because nobody knows the handshake or whatever it was. Masons help black folks a lot. I mean, they could go in, and I've seen this. Distress, something happened to the car on the road, and you end up like you were in the Mason, and suddenly something happens. Black, white, segregated. And yet, and you never saw, they don't have no lodges together, they don't march together. I ain't never seen a Masonic parade with blacks in it until I went to somewhere about a few years ago, not recent. The Masons were, I don't know what the hell they were. They were Masons and no black, but they were black Masons, and it was amazing because we traveled too. they introduce themselves, and suddenly all the help you could ever want is there. And they might say, "See you later, nigga," at the end. But that, I mean, it's so crazy the way we can end up sorting and conflicting our relationships.
I find that the Prince Hall lodges tend to be cornerstones of the black community in ways that
Really?
the white Masonic lodges are not cornerstones anymore of the white community. I find that those Prince Hall lodges still have a big impact on, especially like when you run into a Prince Hall Lodge in inner city Chicago or I mean, it's like they have a big impact on the community. And
Southern Masons, I'll stay on that.
Yeah.
I was going to go to church. They were very instrumental and part of the community because, number one, the Masons generally, I mean, they didn't do economic separation or anything, but there were always Masons that were either educated, had some resources, assets, however, but they were kind of the leaders. But they weren't the only ones in the Mason. I want to say it because other folks were in there that weren't, quote, those privileged blacks, if you will, kind of with a little money, work, and whatever the images made success seemed to be a factor. The women, the Eastern Stars, okay, guess what? Where they? The Masonic Lodge. And husbands, wives, they're all related in some way, friend, you know, so everybody knew everybody. There were non-Masons, everybody couldn't be a Mason, everybody couldn't be an Eastern Star. I mean, you got to keep a little separations. I mean, we all do that. But they were there. They were the places at Easter. Where'd you have your Easter egg hunt? Not at your church, the Masonic Lodge. And you've seen the grounds, and man, you know how many Easter egg hunts and fun, and some kids don't even care about the eggs and all this stuff. You could go do that. Socials, sock hops, as they said on the majority world were talking. Well, we were sock hopping too. Everything, and we had our socials at the Mason Lodge. 7th and 8th grade, I remember when they came. I think we might have started 6th grade with the first ones there. And that's where all the kids, all the family, the parents, everybody showed up and hung out and communicated, met. The doors were open more often. So it's kind of a somewhat could be an ad hoc walk-in place or something, or you see Sarah and you just sit there in the Mason Lodge or on the steps or somewhere under the trees. So it did have significance in our community because of limited venues to begin with. And I had a conversation last a couple of nights ago at the CRE meeting with somebody who was new, and we're talking about the MLK Center. It was a central part of the community. And in that conversation, here we go again with, if you think about some things, what were the real significance? We were exposed to Mahalia Jackson and a whole bunch of other folks. And I sitting there talking with this guy Tuesday, I went, damn, the reason we had these people here, because we had a venue. Chitlin Circuit Days. Where do you stay? Where do you perform? Where do you do anything? We had a stage. Mount Dora Black community had a stage. That was in my thoughts as I reflected yesterday and kind of, man, that's why we had, like I said, Mahalia Jackson, you name it. We had folks that came to little old Easttown and did concerts, shows, or something, and it, I don't know if it's true or not, but Tuesday in that conversation, I went, a venue. You had a venue, so why wouldn't you stop here? You had auditorium. I don't know what the sound system was like or whatever, but it didn't matter because we were a church or somewhere anyway. But we had a community venue, and Mahalia Jackson, I can't remember some of the other well-known, Leontine Price, I think, came. I mean, we had these people, and I'm thinking, why the hell they come to Mount Dora? And then it the flash, like, we had a stage. There weren't venues in many black communities outside of a city where you had a venue. And I'm going, again, we got exposed to stuff, and I'm going, man, that community center, that MLK Center, when that thought hit me, I started remembering, that was a big, it just hadn't dawned on me to think of it as some critical piece. Because what was it? It was a community building. We did convocations and stuff through school. But not every community had a venue for anybody to come.
Especially love Delta blues. And we were talking about blues one day because he likes blues a lot. And he said they used to all come through here. He goes, they'd be on their way to somewhere, and he goes, they would play here. They'd play at the King Center, or there were jukes. There were jukes around where he goes everybody came.
They're the all-night places. That's what the popular name. And everything closed everywhere at 2:00 in any organized village or town or whatever. At 12:00 midnight, local stuff was done. They had all these all-night places, as we call them, out in the woods somewhere, and roughly it had people from a 50-mile radius, I'd say, somewhere like that. Because that was, now you can do that all night, there are no regs, the county doesn't tell you have to close at 12 or anything like that. So you'd be in town at all the places. Everybody closed up in Mount Dora, and the cars would go. Well, where were they going? They didn't all go home. Club Casino out in Eustis was our local all-night place. Eatonville. During the trips we've gone over to Eatonville to be there all night in the morning until 4 in the morning and drive back to Mount Dora. Little side story. We had a kid, one of our friends had his family had a car that was a stick shift. They went to bed at dark. They were just like that. Well, 9, 10 o'clock, we go push the car out of the driveway, push it down the street, and then get in it, push it and start it and drive off. Be gone all night long, come back and shut it off 2 blocks away, push it back in the driveway. And sometimes we'd be gone to Eatonville, we'd go to Club Casino, all kinds of places, and we'd come back that car. Scared to death, because if anything happened, we'd all be dead. They'd all come out and beat the hell out of us and kill us all. Parents. Because you aren't supposed to. But kids are stupid, and they do stupid, wild things. And that was one of those things. We did. And my kids wonder why they can't ever sneak something on me, because I remember being a kid. And we weren't malicious, bad. I mean, it wasn't like that. It was just, that's what we did. We didn't steal, rob, beat, or do. We weren't doing destructive things other than being stupid, because that's what kids do.
Do you remember, well, Barbara owned it, and it eventually became Barbara's, but like...
The bar.
The bar. It was originally the Avenue Club. It's the first name I ever knew it by.
The bar.
The bar.
It became that, but that's why I said the bar.
Okay.
Yeah, it was
yeah.
And Barbara was not the first owner there. I forget who had... It used to be an all-night place, because it wasn't in the city limits. It wasn't a big-time all-night place, but it used to be an all-night place. Before Betty's had it, I know Betty Dawson. Miss Betty Dawson, they had a place out there. One door in, one door out. I wasn't really living here then, but I was visiting young, leave from the service and all that stuff. And I remember I used to go out there because you see everybody, I mean, everybody. And so if you hadn't been in town, you go out there and you run into everybody you thought you ever knew and the new people too. But I never went in. I only had one way in, one way out. I mean, there was a time when that wouldn't even cross my mind, and they had some good music that came through there, and also not going in wasn't a handicap. The parking lot was active too. I mean, it was like the whole place was active. And so in terms of people contacting, socializing, all that, you didn't have to go in either.
So it was McDonald's in Eustis by the time I was a teenager, and you never had to go in.
Yeah.
Yeah, you never had to go in.
So that was an all-night place before Barber's, and they weren't quite in the same location, but kind of in the same location when Barbara got the corner, and her dad, Reverend Andrews. Again, the story of this guy. I'm not saying this for certain, but the reality is he acquired a lot of land. Smart guy and preacher, but he also had a lot of land. So all of that property out there, the Barbers and all of that stuff, and some across the highway, Reverend Andrews had accumulated that property. And the bars got there, and it got closed and eventually torn down, which is a shame because that was a location, that my little mind, every time I come back, boy, it was a good location. It could have been a spot with a bar, lounge. I mean, there was nothing out there. In the two communities, and the rural Sorrento and Lake Samant, it was just prime, and I'm sad that vision didn't get researched somewhere in somebody's and think about it and do it. But anyway, yeah, I know Barber's place, and
it was, yeah, I mean, I think somebody will, well, who knows, there'd probably be a Wawa across the street from the racetrack, but...
And Barber's wasn't in my experience, if you will, because by then I was not really living here, but I was in and out, and I knew where it wasn't, but it wasn't a place that I went into and had a lot of, but I knew everybody in there. And again, if I came home and wanted to just go to Barber's, because everybody in there I would know.
Your perspective on the time that you spent with, sports in this town?
None.
None. Well, that's not true.
It is. I'm going to evolve. But from a participant level, through 8th grade, I really didn't do sports here. And I didn't do the integration and how that worked and all of that. I know folks who did, and my brother and the experience, and I could tell you a story about the first session of school's integration. But the sports, and yeah, you're right. The story of when I met you, unbeknownst to me, that when I re-met you, that you were who you were until we started talking. And the story was, I was driving down Lincoln. I was out of the Air Force, hadn't gone back to college yet, so I got out, and so this was like the winter, spring of 70 or something. And I'm driving down Lincoln, look over all these kids over there, a bunch of black kids over there, and all these white adults, no black adults. First reaction, well, damn. Oh, white folks over there working with kids. Where are the black parents? And then I kick myself and go, it's 4 o'clock in the afternoon, they're at work. That's where they are. there's no shortcoming because they're not there. They're at work. So I'm 21 or some age, and so my car just veers off over to that, and the coaching guy that lived out on Lake Ola, Pat was his,
Coach Orr.
Orr. That's who it was, the coach. And I went up and introduced myself, Orr, and yeah, come to work. Didn't even hesitate. And so I did that, and that was a participation in sports. Now, why did I do that? Part of it was, as I said, there were no black adults. First reaction was, damn, how can you have your kids over there and not be there? And then I slapped myself across the head, realized what time it was, and they're at work. They can't be there. And so I went over and offered help, and they accepted it. And so I worked with kids for that time, and I'm not going to tell you Ernie's stories. That's another story. So that was my introduction to baseball in the community, and it was just like a spur of the moment, smash in the head, the car veered, and there I was. And it was a really wonderful experience and exposure. And I kind of got this, we touch on this view that sometimes just seeing or being exposed is a great life changer for somebody. And wow, I saw that blue tint on the rainbow that day, and you learn this color. I don't know. We don't know. But I do know when I hear a lot of people tell stories about their success, their motivation and interest, man, a lot of it's a weird, like I saw this deer jump across the road, and there was some arcing, I don't know, weird thing. And now you're the best and the most creative, and it drove you in a direction that who would have thought it? And so I'm a great believer, just show people things. Let them touch, see, feel. I don't know what will draw an attention and make them go, wow, I can do this better, worse, bigger, or something. But you will hear a little innocent thing in a lot of people's discussions about why they ended up doing what they did and doing it so well. And so baseball, hey, go out and let them see. But also they needed to see a model. I don't know nothing about baseball. It wasn't my sport. I played a little bit, but I don't know nothing about coaching kids. But I used to be one. And I'm becoming one again. Some people tell me, but that's okay too, because I enjoyed y'all. Well, church as a kid, you know, that's an experience, and we mentioned a little bit of that. And church, it wasn't a philosophy, doctrine thing as a kid. Churches were places where we all went, and non-denominational, even if you had a denomination. See, that was there, but Fifth Sundays, the holiness churches. They were always included. Fifth Sunday, they did something that included them. Big revival, big baptism at Lake Gertrude. So religion was separate churches, but they weren't. And a little side story, I went to college after the military to continue my college. I went to a little small school up in East Tennessee that's affiliated with Christian Church. Not because I was affiliated with Christian Church or knew anything about them, the location of school, and my brother was going to school there, and I went up and visited and got hooked. Well, the reason I mention that is that church was church in my paradigm, and there were Baptists, Methodists, and people that spoke in tongues and rolled in the floor. I mean, that was church. This doctrine and branch here and there. Methodist, Baptist, yeah, there's Methodists and Baptists. I had no idea doctrinally, to me, what that meant. One had a tub inside the church that they baptize you in, and the other sprinkle you with water. And when the fifth Sunday come, they all went and dunked you in Lake Gertrude if you've been baptized. I mean, I literally, my God, Jesus, all that was just that. The denominations were all right still. And when I went to Milligan, I went, man, these people were serious doctrine changes and what branch, and this little word made your gospel different from my gospel, and they're serious. And I'm going, whoa, I have no clue what this is all about. That's my church. And yet, in part of our society, man, these churches are different. And my denomination ain't even close to yours. We don't go to your church, you don't go to mine, and we got this little bit of word somewhere, and that's a huge mountainous difference. And it's serious stuff. And I used to wander around there like I'm in a sociology study lab watching all these religious interactions and taboos, no-boos, maybe boos, all this stuff is just fascinating to me, because in the churches, religion was never an intellectual thing. I mean, it was church. Very basic Ten Commandment kind of church. All of them. Rolling forward didn't change any of that. But man, there are real strong feelings about philosophical, quote, differences in religious doctrine and approaches and theories and stuff. It just, from a sociological standpoint, it's absolutely fascinating. It makes no sense to me from a religious standpoint.
Well,
now,
don't you think all of society is that way? That like we focus more on our differences than our commonalities?
Well, the way
I think it just gets more intense when you walk through the church doors. You know?
The way you ask that question might be more important than it seems, because I don't know what the differences are. I don't know, other than, well, in our world, the dunking of the thing, yeah, that's a doctrinal thing, but it wasn't like critical. Why is it so critical in some that, man, you are not baptized unless you've been immersed, versus you're not baptized unless we get you dunked in the pool in our baptism? I don't know. But the Ten Commandments ought to be consistent.
Yeah.
You think?
I would think. You would think.
So I don't know. But I've always, and my wife, who came out of the Christian church, there's a branch of something. There are two, and she knows all of this stuff and grew up in it, in the camps, and it's amazing. They know these kids from the certain churches from way different places. They know each other because they all went to Bible camp somewhere, hundreds of miles from their home, you know. So that, I don't know how I got on that tangent.
Well, I know those kids too.
But these kind of things are some of the things that confuse my simple mind and make me go nuts if I try to figure it out.
The church in certainly in a lot of communities in the 50s, 60s, early 70s was as much a social construct for the community, for all communities, black and white. You know,
it's a centralized, and you have a reason to be there, and you can structure a whole lot of stuff in the midst of that reason. that make it consistent, and you still do it. There were social centers, there were centers of education, there were centers of organizing, protesting, all kinds of things. I had a flashback somewhere driving, and my mind was thinking about something, and I thought about this thing with Obama and the minister up in Chicago.
Oh, okay.
You remember when they
Yeah.
tried to
Yeah.
say, and he just denounced them and all. Man, that black minister's been saying those same things for years and years and years. And if you listen to the whole sermon, you would see that in the context of what those words they picked out and seemed to attack were, hell, there were more. If you want to talk about how inciting it was, there were more stuff around that. They picked out words
Oh yeah.
that excited somebody else, but the excitement was way before that. If you want to nitpick and debate with somebody, but the reason it impressed me was these messages of every church in the black community, every minister, no matter how sophisticated, unsophisticated, these kind of messages have always been a part of our sermons, because the black church has always been the social setting for protest and objection and education and voter that's part of their role in the community. Now, why is that? One reason might be because the minister could read. I mean, the minister could read. Think about the importance of that when nobody else can read. The minister is one person to read. He's the one person, if he's the only reader, that can take a newspaper and read the news for you. So there's a reason, I think, that makes that kind of talk and discussion and content of sermons and all of, there's nothing insightful, arising. It's just, unless, hey, you're being abused, you need to do something about it, and here's something. If that's inciting, and yeah, they're very, very much involved in that. Always have been. Separation of church and state. The principle sounds great, and it seems it should be. But the reality is there is no, how do you separate? You separate by not putting religious doctrines into your laws, but does that mean religious folks in churches can't talk about social issues, legal issues? No. So I just thought, I don't know what I was doing, it made me think about that and bring it forward. We're still doing those kinds of things to people. Man, we'll define something and make it the awfulest thing in the world that you're saying hello about. See? It's funny how that works. And I'm going, and when that noise is being made about that, you know, your first reaction is, how naive, but no, that was targeted, because you can go find any sermon, especially at a big city church, and there are social comments in it all. There are issue comments in it all. There are issue comments about black folks, get off your butt, or black folks, you need to go down and do this because this is happening. That was the part of the communication network. The education was in the church, the preacher. Not all of them could read, but many of them could. And that was why they were crucial to the interactions, at least in when I look at history and think about possibilities about how this thing happened that way. Good, because they've done a lot of good. They've done a lot of harm in some places too. I mean, they don't get a free pass because they've done great things. And yes, they've also been some sticklers in place, because again, they're the leaders. If they aren't rebelling against some of this stuff, either overtly or subtly, and they aren't neutral, some of them are actually whether consciously or not. I'm not pointing fingers, but some of their actions and things might not necessarily be, in some people's opinion, the best thing. But nonetheless, they're in that space of communicating and exchanging.
That brings us full circle almost to the first thing we talked about, and that is the dichotomy of a childhood under segregation in Mount Dora. That there was the idyllic stuff, and there was all of the Jim Crow stuff, but it's still ultimately in the end, you came back because there's something about this place that makes people. A lot of us came back. I lived away for 30 years, but I came back.
And my coming back was not like a romantic return to idyllic perfection. I can talk these, but that wasn't it. It was just something here, family, comfort, friends, old age, and not wanting to be doing anything new. Why would I inherit from me? I mean, I don't know what all those elements are, but I never had an aversion to coming back here. And my wife, we've been married 46 years. Mount Dora is not even what it was when we got married. And her introduction to Mount Dora, well, maybe I wouldn't want to be concerned about, I would be concerned about living here too. But when we got here, and in a sense we were forced here because of my mother's illness, and I don't mean that in age and progression in this, I don't mean force, but I had a reason to engage in the town. And fortunately, my mother's friends, not my friends. I want to be clear about this. My 97-year-old mother's friends, Harlow Milton, do you know him? Mm-hmm. He and Michelle put me up whenever I come, 1 day, 2 weeks, whatever, just here's your room. And so when I came, a lot of logistical stuff I didn't have to deal with, and so I could be out and about and do things, and I still wanted to come back. There are a lot of wonderful people here, a lot of, censor this, assholes any way you want to here, but which one will I want to be centered around when I show up? Well, there are a-holes everywhere, and they're good people, but there's a connection, there's some ease and comfort because we still have some chops here, if you will. People know my family. Is that, I'm not saying that to say there's an advantage, but there's a comfort level. And I know who I'm dealing with. One of the greatest things that I always tell people, I grew up during segregation and stuff. I'm happy because I know how to defend myself. I ain't like that. And being 74, I really don't give a crap. See? So I can enjoy myself. I can enjoy the people that are enjoyable to be around. I don't have to be around anybody. And so I don't know what it is and how to say the words. I'm here. And I want it to be here. And I still want to be here. My wife now wants to be here. Not that she didn't want to be here. She didn't know what here was. As many times as we back and forth and all of that and stuff, and we came here for years and never came downtown. Why? I didn't come here to visit. I came here to visit my folks and talk to people and stuff that I knew, and that didn't come down. And part of her perspective was really kind of not really having a perspective, because I didn't come downtown, number one. Sometimes we did, but it wasn't the center of anything, and there was nothing to come downtown for even anyway at that, during some of those years, because downtown didn't have anything. See?
Somewhere they're not supposed to be, you get a phone call, And I want that phone call.
There's still a lot of that around.
And people know each other, and so it's like even when my youngest, when she wasn't able to drive, but hung out with the older ballet girls, and they go to one flight up, and here's your radius.
Yep.
You know, don't wander off past the downtown square. I'll find you if you need me. You got a phone with you. You know, it's like I was perfectly okay with it.
We didn't have phones, and we were wandering around the woods.
Yes, but it was.
And nobody, and even in that environment with the segregation, nobody was concerned. Nobody was concerned. We'd just be wandering, and you'd be home at night for supper, because you're going to get hungry and come home. You're going to get hungry and come home if you're a kid. You will get hungry and come home. Unless you stopped at Johnny's house on the way back and his mom pull you in and say, come here and eat because we eat now. That could happen.
And she could whoop you too.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Or send a whooping message.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You come home and man, you don't know how many times when I come home and I see my mom sitting or in a position. That's not where she's supposed to be. Now, why is she there? Well, somebody has called and said something, asked a question. Hey, boy, were you down by Miss Jones' house? Yes, ma'am. Well, anything you want to tell me about? I mean, that's the question. Anything you want to tell me? Anything I should know? That's the question. Not tell a lie. Right, wrong, or indifferent. I dare you to tell a lie. I dare you to tell a lie. Now, if you target it was nothing. There might not be any consequences, but you know, and my parents were, I thought, pretty reasonable. And they'd listen and, and I'd get a little lecture about the sense of think about, and that was it. But I'm still wondering, are you going to kill me in my sleep or what? Is you trying to fool me? What are you trying to do here? Because that would seem too easy. But that's the way it was. You're right. Man, you think you... And I never got confronted with, you were always, is there something you want to tell me? Do you think there's something I should know about? And that's an invitation. I dare you to tell a lie. Because that ain't acceptable. I don't care what it was.
Then you get a worse whipping for a lie than you do.
The lie is a problem.
Yeah, I got that whipping.
So not only is lying wrong, I'm scared to lie.
Yeah.
To this day, people don't believe it. Sometimes I'll get ready to say a cuss word, and I'm 74 years old. My mom probably heard me say damn, I think, once. And that was, I was on leave, first leave I had coming from basic training in the Air Force. And we were driving down Sylvan Shore Drive. Think about this now, I'm 18 years old, how long that's been, I still remember this. And there was some lady stopped at that stop sign down at the bottom, at the triangle. And I don't know what she was doing, but she wasn't moving and should have been moving. And I went, get the damn hell out of and I slapped my own head. Not literally, but before the words, well, hell, I've been in the basic and we've been talking and cussing, and I had one little laugh. I'm 18 years old and I still remember that. And I know that one time my mom heard me curse. I don't know, and boy, I stopped myself. I'm an adult. That's the lessons and the training and all of that stuff that you get about behavior, manners, and being polite. Behavior, manners, and being polite apply to adults. Back to my thing. How did you deal with the white? Well, they were adults. And they got yes sir, yes ma'am, like everybody else did. That's how. That part was not difficult. Because that was not a difficult thing to do.